Welcome to our podcast. Today, we're diving into the essential meaning of Passover. It's often seen as a ritual, but many scholars argue it's far more than that. Dr. Morales, how would you describe the true purpose behind Passover?
Thanks for having me. Passover is foundational for understanding a new identity for the Israelites. Rather than a simple annual rite, it's about God reshaping an entire culture after centuries of slavery, creating a new community ethos.
That's fascinating. So, Passover wasn't just about religious observance, but about cultural transformation. How did this process begin for the Israelites?
It started with a dramatic confrontation of the powers controlling their world. God systematically dismantled the Egyptian gods' authority, which the Hebrews had depended on for 400 years. This set the stage for a new narrative and allegiance.
Let's explore that more. For centuries, the Hebrews lived under Egyptian gods, almost like being trapped in unending debt. Can you elaborate on how God broke that power during Passover?
Certainly. Imagine owing a bank so much that you live in constant anxiety, and then, overnight, the bank is destroyed, your debt erased. That's analogous to what happened. God's plagues shattered the Egyptians' religious and economic systems.
So these plagues weren't random, they targeted the core of Egypt's identity and stability. Can you give specific examples of which gods or systems were challenged?
Absolutely. Each plague corresponded to an Egyptian deity, for instance. The Nile turning to blood challenged Hapi, the river god, while the darkness undermined Ra, the sun god. This wasn't just punishment, but a fundamental reordering of authority.
That debt analogy is powerful. Many people today know the feeling of mounting debt and powerlessness. How does the Passover story resonate for listeners in that situation?
It's deeply resonant. Just as modern debt can feel inescapable, the Hebrew slavery was all-consuming. The sudden intervention, like a meteorite destroying the bank, represents complete liberation from a system designed to oppress and control.
And that liberation wasn't just economic or physical, right? It had spiritual implications too?
Exactly. The event redefined their identity, freeing them from both external domination and internalized beliefs about their own value and destiny. That's why Passover remains so significant today. It's about total transformation.
Let's shift to the theme of children. Passover places special emphasis on the firstborn. Why was valuing children, particularly firstborn, so important in this context?
In ancient societies, the firstborn represented legacy and future. By sparing the Israelite firstborns, God affirmed their worth. Interestingly, these children were born twice, once biologically, and again through survival and divine favor at Passover.
That's a profound idea, being born again as a community. How did this reshape family and societal priorities among the Israelites?
It instilled a new sense of responsibility and hope. Every family saw their children as essential to the nation's future, reinforcing the value of obedience and communal protection in their emerging culture.
Building on that, Passover seems to forge a new kind of community identity. It wasn't just about ethnicity or genealogy anymore. Can you explain how this worked?
Absolutely. Participation in Passover itself became the mark of belonging, not just ancestry. Even non-Jews who observed the ritual were included, while some Israelites who didn't participate were excluded. Obedience, not bloodline, defined the new people.
So, Passover democratized the sense of belonging. In a way, it was an inclusive event, provided you aligned with its core principles.
Precisely. This shift from a genetic to a covenant-based identity was revolutionary, setting a precedent for faith communities that value shared beliefs and practices over heritage.
Let's talk about time. Passover established a new calendar for the Israelites. What's the significance of resetting time in this context?
Resetting the calendar was a profound act of sovereignty. It was as if God said, "Your story starts here." The Israelites began counting months from Passover, signaling a new era where divine events, not royal decrees, structured their lives.
That's a radical idea, time itself being reclaimed from the empire that enslaved them. How does this compare to how other ancient societies measured time?
Most societies base their calendars on natural cycles or royal events. Here, God ties timekeeping to a redemptive act, making history itself sacred and purposeful for the people.
You mentioned earlier how creation itself was contaminated by idolatry in Egypt. Can you break down what that means and how Passover helped recover creation?
Certainly, the Egyptians worshipped the sun, moon, and stars, giving divine status to creation rather than the creator. Through the plagues, especially darkness, God stripped these objects of their supposed power and restored their original purpose.
It's almost as if God rebooted the natural order, reclaiming it from misuse. What impact did this have on Israelite worldview?
It reoriented their relationship to nature. Creation was no longer an object of worship, but a signpost to the Creator's authority and care. This distinction became foundational for their new faith.
Let's look closer at the plagues. They weren't just random disasters, but targeted strikes against Egypt's systems. Can you elaborate on how each one dismantled social and economic structures?
Absolutely. Each plague, from the Nile's pollution to the death of livestock, undermined Egypt's economy, public confidence, and sense of invincibility. Studies show that societies facing such shocks often experience deep cultural trauma and rethinking.
So, the plagues forced both Egyptians and Hebrews to confront the limits of their worldviews. Was there a turning point where resistance gave way to realization?
Yes, particularly with the death of the firstborns. Even Pharaoh's pride was finally broken. It's a stark reminder that, historically, societies may only change after profound loss or crisis.
Earlier, you mentioned obedience as the new qualifier for belonging. How did this principle shape future generations, and does it have parallels today?
Obedience became the gateway to community membership. For the Israelites, it meant following God's instructions, not just claiming ancestry. In modern terms, it's like citizenship by allegiance rather than by birth, a concept echoed in many civic and faith communities.
That's a significant shift. It means anyone could potentially belong, provided they commit to the core values, right?
Exactly. This principle fostered a sense of collective responsibility and adaptability, traits crucial for surviving and thriving in new environments.
As we wrap up, let's reflect on the broader legacy of Passover. How did this event transform the people who experienced it, and what lessons remain relevant today?
The Israelites who left Egypt were fundamentally different from those who entered. Passover catalyzed a journey from oppression to purpose, from scattered families to a unified nation. Modern readers can draw hope from this. Even entrenched systems can be overturned.
The story also highlights the value of community, time, and obedience in forging a new future. Any final thoughts on how Passover's message might inspire contemporary listeners?
I'd say Passover teaches us that profound change is possible personally and collectively when we're willing to let go of old allegiances and embrace new beginnings anchored in shared purpose and faith.